And we're live. Welcome to the show. This is Conscious Conversations, Sunday, February 11th, 2018. That's an interesting set of synchronicities as we went live at 2:11 p.m. here in my time zone.
Nice.
And
on 2:11. Good work.
I wanted to say welcome to my two new guests. Well, one returning guest and someone I love working with, Anthony and Kevmo. Please introduce yourselves.
Go ahead, Kev.
All right. Well, my name's Kevin, but everybody calls me Kevmo. And what do? I do stuff. I write a comic book called Righteous. It's about a story about a guy who lives in corporate America, and he kind of gets this disease that makes him help other people instead of make money for himself. And every time he helps someone, they get the disease too. And it's free online, so you can read that. And I'm 45, and I've been around for a while. That's it. Moving on.
Cool. And my name's Anthony Farrow, and I am currently in the south of Spain. In the physical world, I'm traveling around many different countries, house sitting, so taking care of people's homes and their animals, and generally just improving the place wherever we go from place to place. And in the digital world, well, which kind of bleeds into the physical as well, mainly digital, I run a company called Live Up, and we provide meditation guidance as well as other inspirational ideas and connections with people. And we sell products such as this cloak and meditation cushions and other meditation tools.
That's awesome.
Cool.
I love both of your works, honestly, and I usually skip the introduction section for myself. And someone pointed out to me last night that maybe, setting the tone for these conversations where I skip that out isn't as mindful and conscious as it could be. So I am 36 years old. I turned 37 in November. I was born, my birthday is one day after Terrence McKenna's, but many years later. And I was raised in the Deep South in a very prejudiced, bigoted time and place. My hometown that I was born in was actually segregated. Well, I mean, still semi-segregated to this day, from what I understand. And there's been an amazing adventure in this game called life, and I think that it really sets us right to today's topic, which is spiritual awakening. That experience of becoming more aware of yourself and your connection to the universe and all that is, and that's what brings us today to this conversation to talk about spiritual awakening. And I wanted to open it up to ask if anybody had, for you, was it one specific event or some kind of internal, knowing that was always there, and so just a series of events? What's been your experience on your spiritual awakening journey?
Well, this is my favorite topic of all topics, so I'm very happy to be a part of this. It's something I think about a lot, and mine happened recently enough that it still feels fairly fresh, even though it's been 3 or 4 years now. And, I love the topic because I love it for myself, to be able to tell my story, but I also really love to hear other people's stories. And I've been really surprised at some of the different situations that have caused people to awaken. So it sounds like we're going to be talking about that. So I'll set some of those aside and talk instead about mine. And it was I would say that it was a series of 2 or 3 very extreme epiphany-like experiences. So it was all plant medicine. So in my case, you know, I was, as I've said before, I was just surviving in this society in the way that I was supposed to, that I was making money for myself. I was believing in science over any spirituality whatsoever, and thought that all spirituality was hogwash, that, you know, the astrology is crazy talk, and you know, talking to people after they're dead is impossible, and when we die we just turn into mud in the ground, and we just cease to exist. And I was so convinced of this that it defined my reality. And you know, I love to talk to people about their religious beliefs, though. I always thought that was interesting, but at the same time, it was interesting so that I could try to convince them that they were wrong. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, I had my first kind of plant medicine-like experience, and it kind of opened my mind. And then I had another plant medicine experience that really opened my mind, and then probably 1 or 2 more that just finished the job. And so then it was just I was just balls to the wall with, you know, let's figure out this new world. I'm a child in this new world now. You know, for 40 years, I existed in the way that I just described myself existing. And then all of a sudden, all the possibilities were there. And I love exploring and understanding the world that I'm in, and learning about it. So I really dove in and got excited about this new possibility. And so it was truly like a rebirth and an opportunity to kind of show my, you know, like, you know, my strengths that I had worked on up to that point, I got to apply to this new world. So I enjoyed it a great deal. And so instead of going into the story right now, I just wanted to give that summary, and then we'll probably get to the story later and give Anthony a chance to answer the question specifically.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That was great. And you know, I'll briefly just you know, kind of continue on from that, because I ultimately think that a lot of people's experiences, you know, kind of linking together in that way, in the sense that, you know, we're all kind of growing up in this world, you know, and we go through this life, you know, sticking to the mainstream paradigm, and that's just, you know, eat, sleep, work, repeat, all that, you know, and it's drilled into you, like you said, Kev, to be atheist, to be scientific. Anything that's spiritual is crazy talk, and just, you know, don't go near that stuff, or just ridicule those people and all that sort of thing. And then something happens, some kind of experience happens, and it's either, you know, can be plant medicine, can be a near-death experience, can be just surrounding yourself with people who are of that spiritual mindset, who slowly pry away your guard. I mean, for me personally, it was plant-based medicine as well. However, it was a much more abrupt, I feel. I know yours, Kev, was over a few sessions. I think mine was just like that, compacted into one session, and it was a vast. I think like I said, I think I said this in another talk. It was about 25 or more grams of the highest concentration psilocybin mushrooms we could buy out of Amsterdam, and that was enhanced by dark chocolate and marijuana, both enhancing effects to, on top of that already ridiculous amount, which we didn't do any research about. We just, you know, we just went to the Rastafarian man in the shop and we're like, yeah, give us everything you got. So yeah, so it was a bit of a wild ride for me, and you know, it's been the best and worst thing I've ever done. That was, I definitely say, would like be the pivotal moment in like I could say, there's a big contrast change there, but there were many things for, like, you know, which I could peg to a spiritual awakening, which happened before and after then. And I think that spiritual awakening is obviously an ongoing thing, and you know, we're all connected into this like puzzle piece of ideas and experience. And we, you know, as we slowly like assimilate things like that, they they become your own experience and enlighten you in some way. You know, everything's enlightening in a way. So that's kind of, yeah, in a nutshell. Like mine was just from plant-based medicine. A couple other little bits to mention, but we can get into that later. You know, we can get into the actual story of what happened later on.
Okay, well, that was.
Maybe we should hear from you, Josh, as well. I mean, I've heard you mention a bit before, but maybe you want to go in as well.
I love each of your answers, and I love how both of you had experiences with plant-based medicine as, you know, kind of a launching point, because that's, you know, a position I like to take in conversations about the use of, you know, plant-based medicine and spirituality. But for me, it wasn't plant-based medicine. Well, I mean, my mom did do LSD and weed while, you know, in the first month or so that she was pregnant. So I can't say it wasn't plant medicine, but I don't really think that's the case so much for me. I think that for me, it wasn't, you know, one sudden experience or even a couple. It was this long, unending stream of synchronicities and psychic experiences. And I've been astral traveling since I was a child. I mean, the day I was born, I flatlined a few minutes after I was born, and they had to, you know, use a helicopter to ship me to Children's Hospital in Little Rock. And I know that I spent the first year of my life in and out of the hospital, and that I've flatlined more than once on the operating table, and I've had 27 surgeries at this point. I was paralyzed for a short point in my late teens. That was an interesting experience, but all of those experiences, each one was just this little piece. And, you know, the earliest experiences are what got me interested in studying. You know, I would go to church and I would see these beings that no one else could see there. And sometimes I try to talk about them, but that would get me in trouble sometimes. And sometimes they would say things when a pastor would talk, and I would repeat what they said, and I would get in trouble for that. And there's lots of little things like that that got me to studying. And martial arts, you know, introduced me to the idea of life force energy being all around us, and that we could direct it. And that just further helped fuel, you know, my own quest. But if I had to say there was one of those such moments that was pivotal to me, I'd say it was the day my dad died. Was Christmas Day when I was 12 years old. And I made a promise to myself that day that I would figure out for myself, and if possible for everyone else, why we were here and how to deal with pain and trauma and death in ways that didn't break us as people. And that promise has led me through becoming a Wiccan priest and all the training and writing and research and dedication that was required to learn that path. it led me to study the Vedas, to study yoga, to study various forms of kung fu, karate, taekwondo, aikido, different world religions, and just all of that has all just been this never-ending spiral. And so for me, I think spiritual awakening is not something that just happens. I don't look at it as an analog on or off state. To me, it's like a lotus blossom that never stops blooming. There's a new blossom in the center every time it opens. Whole new layers, like layers to an onion, but an onion that never ends. And I think that, enlightenment is just getting ourselves in that moment of that transcendent union, that connection with everything. And the more time we spend getting in that state, the easier it is for us to stay in that state for longer and longer periods of time, helping to be better vessels for that vibe. I rambled there, but
no, I was just going to say that was a beautiful and magical way to deal with the loss you dealt with, to turn it into something that pushed you forwards and kind of helped you find beauty and more magic in the world than before. I think that was amazing. I think that's a really a lot of people would have dealt with that in the same way you dealt with it.
Well, it wasn't all beautiful and magical like that. I skipped
I can imagine
where I tried to kill myself a few times. Back in 2009, I had carried that pain my whole life, and so I stopped celebrating Christmas that year. That was the last year that I really celebrated it. I mean, I would do it for show for my family until I graduated high school, and then I stopped showing up for the most part. But I was with this girl, and I'd been with her for 6 years, and I was head over heels in love with her. But, we'd hit a point where she just wasn't ready to continue the relationship. And so it was a Friday night, like December 9th, 2009, I believe. And I got off work at like 6 p.m. and I ran to the store to try to go Christmas present shopping. But I was in her car because she was the only one that had a car between the two of us at that time. And, we've been together 6 years, and I hadn't really positively celebrated Christmas with her yet. And that was her favorite holiday. And I just kind of felt it was pretty douchey and it was time to get over it. And long story short, she called and asked where I was, and I told her I was Christmas present shopping, and she told me not to buy anything and to rush home. And so I was worried. So I got her a little treat and grabbed myself something to drink and some cigarettes, and I rushed home. And lo and behold, she had all of her shit packed and had already rented a house the day before and moved out over the course of about 30 minutes, where my entire world fell apart. And I sat there begging her not to leave. And then I started helping her because I didn't want to see her struggle with the weight of all of her stuff. And she left. And I had no one there. And, it was a really dark couple of weeks. And so then the Christmas Eve, I was alone. And I was pretty sure I was going to be alone for the rest of my life. So I might as well just end it. And so I went out in my backyard and I took a couple 2x4s and I made myself a little A-frame, and ran a cross beam between them and used a 5-gallon bucket to stand on and one of those orange electric extension cords. And I made myself a little noose and I stood up there, and I do not recommend anyone ever try this. This was another changing point for me where I decided that I was done with depression. But it wasn't in this moment. It was what happened next that caused that. And that was that I had gotten myself a little drunk, and I decided that I was going to end it. And so I jumped, kicking the bucket as I did. And the support 2x4 or 2x2, 2x4, yeah, 2x4 that I was using, it snapped because I was heavy, and that's a 2x4, and it hit me right in the back of the head, and it knocked me out. And that year we had record snow, and so I got knocked out in the snow in my backyard. And I came to about 2 hours later, but while I was unconscious, I had this dream that my dad was sitting there talking to me, and I couldn't move my body. I was paralyzed. I was frozen. And he was talking to me, and he was going, "Are you really going to let the same demons that took me away from you do that to everyone that loves you?" And I didn't believe him that there were people that loved me, but he just stuck with me and kept pointing out more and more people that I was just ignoring the signs that these people all love me. I'm not alone. And that whether it was really my dad and his spirit or not, it was for me. And from that moment forward, I began to change. I began to claw my way out of depression, chronic depression. And I healed myself. And I haven't had suicidal thoughts in a long time. And I don't intend to. I've had bad days, but I know how to deal with them because I've taken a look at what tools are available in my consciousness, and I've utilized them. And I would have never had that if not for all these experiences of spiritual awakenings and trials and ordeals that spurred them on.
Wow. That was a very compelling story, told Josh, and thank you for sharing that, first of all. And I think that puts you in my books as probably one of the strongest people I know for how you. Mm-hmm. I know, but don't be modest. That was a lot to go through, and you've come back from the edge of of death. So that was well done. And that's been hard, but I would say to you, like you said, if you were debating whether it was real or not, the dream you had, I think at this point, with the experiences we had and knowing what we know, that it's safe to say your dad was with you then, and probably had been looking out for you for a long time, and probably still is.
I believe so. I had another dreaming with him Christmas Eve this last year, and we got to go back to the night of his death and heal that pain. So it's it's a journey, and we're always walking it. And the thing is we're never alone, because everyone that's walked on our journey with us before that has transitioned is still walking with us.
Just like Heather brought up in your last talk, there's a spirit for everything. There's a guide for everything that exists, and legions of angels walking beside us.
Indeed.
I found that a very good story. But thank you very much for sharing, Josh. I know that's hard stuff to talk about, but you kept yourself together, and that's a very hard part of healing is sharing the pain and lessening the burden. And then you open yourself to hearing responses, and you probably even thought about things in a new way, and you probably will tonight after divulging that to us. So thank you, and thank yourself.
Thank you. So, with all that, though, what do you think the value is on the spiritual awakening journey in our pain, in our traumas?
I think it's highly important. I think it's the thing, because if you think about yours, obviously lots and lots of pain, and then if you think about doing plant medicines, they're not all happy times. There's definitely a lot of pain involved in those. It's like a pain pill that you're going to get over. And so I've often thought of it that way too, is that it's also confidence in a pill. And it's not a pill, but what I mean, like it's you know that you'll make it through. You know that it will challenge you. You know that, and this doesn't just apply to plant medicine. This applies to everything. You know that you can find lessons in it, and you know that you'll look back on it and say, as difficult as that was, I'm very glad that it happened, because I like myself better, because I love myself now in a different way, in a better way. And so if it were just all positive and rosy, then I don't think we would get a lot of those things. I don't think we would get a lot of that self-love. We would just we would almost forget about it, which is interesting, that our memories are best at something that's gone wrong than for something that's gone right. And you don't necessarily apply lessons to something that's gone right. Well, I did it right. It all worked out great. Like, there's no lessons in that. I'm good. I'm still good. Yeah. So I think there is a huge value to a painful experience, and as much as we don't want it, like we run away screaming. And when I've been working with people that are interested in ayahuasca, I'm on a couple of Facebook groups, and it's been really fascinating to watch people post about it and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to do it, and I'm scared, and I'm worried, and I'm nervous, and blah blah blah, all these things." And I really enjoy getting those, because I get to respond to them, and I say the problem that the thing that you're doing wrong right now is that you're looking at this and you're hoping for a good trip. And when you look for a good trip, that means you're just looking for a good time. And if you just want a good time, then go ahead and drink some alcohol or something like that. But if you want to have a beneficial trip, then you expose yourself to the possibility that your primitive human mind has no idea what that might look like. But the spirit that you're bringing into you to teach you, they know exactly what that looks like, and to give yourself to them for that experience, and trust them that they will never give you something that you cannot handle, and love them and say, I'm ready, give it to me, no matter how painful or how joyous and beautiful it is at the time, because in the end, I will look back on this and I will see that Thank goodness that happened. I learned so much about myself. Yes, it was painful. Yes, I was crying. Yes, I was introduced to demons and I had to face those fears. Yes, I was introduced to all these horrible things, but I'm so glad that I did, because I'm a much better person as a result of it.
I concur, like, especially with that sentiment. I'm so grateful for all of the painful things that have happened to me, because I think that had I not been exposed to them, I wouldn't be as open to me hearing about anything else happening in the world, and as open to seeing from another perspective had they not.
Pain is our greatest strength at the end of the at the end of the day. We just asked about value of pain, and Kevin just elaborated on the value of pain, and just like you said at the beginning, Kevin, if you didn't have pain, you wouldn't know how good you get it, and if vice versa, if you don't get it good, then you don't really know what pain is. You can't have a concept of one without the other. And I believe strongly that the more severe the pain you experience, the greater, the gold is going to be, the greater the other side of the spectrum you're going to get thrown to. And everything is just oscillation, wavelengths, vibration, and we're going up and down like this. So, maybe it's you have a very, very low point and very long, drawn out sweep, but you're going to reap your rewards at the end when you go back up. And this whole thing about karma being mixed into it as well, because we can choose once we get the spiritual awakening. When the spiritual awakening happens, you get to the point where you see the weight of your actions and the subconscious things that are happening in the world around you, the spiritual aspects of how they operate. Then you get to kind of help yourself balance out what's happening. And then this is what the Buddha called the middle way. If you constantly search for a good time, and you're looking to feel good and get the best out of life all the time, you're going to crash. You're going to have the opposite come to you, because you need to operate around the middle line. You're trying to go up forever. You can't do it. It takes more concentration, more power, and more compression to get even higher. Eventually you can't handle it, and you have to come back down, and you have to learn the lessons that give you the bounce to go higher. And I think, Josh, with you, if you've had these things early on in life, near-death experiences, and these other things, that those have possibly given a lot of power to your life, a lot of room for expansion, if you will. And and then going through different peaks and troughs, I ultimately think if you have experienced a lot of pain, you have a lot of power. The more pain you feel you have, the more power you have, the more you're going to channel that into some great things in your life. And going through those things in a spiritual manner and learning about how and why this is happening will only help you. Will only help you shine a light through the maze, so to speak.
I think you're right on there as far as it's not some egoic sense of, oh, I'm powerful.
Mm-hmm.
More,
yeah.
That idea that the more versatile, more adaptable you are, and the more adaptable you are, the greater survival advantage you have.
Potential, same. So power probably wasn't the best word, but yeah, potential.
I think you're right. I think just my fascination with words, between being a huge fan of Jiddu Krishnamurti and his conversations on syntax, and all of my having to copy, the encyclopedia and the dictionaries as a kid when I got myself in trouble. I think it's just given me an obsession with words that sometimes is distracting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't know where I was going with that.
That's fine. I had a question earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting to me because I actually watched the Sixth Sense last night, and exactly, it was the first time I've seen it. This is like one of those movies that everyone's seen, but yeah, it was the first time I'd seen it from start to finish. I knew the twist and all that stuff, but it was very interesting because it's kind of more relevant now. Like, I think when that movie came out, it was very like just sort of an idea on the fringe of stuff. It's just a fringe idea. But now it's kind of you get a lot of kids and a lot of people saying they see dead people, or they see spirits and things like that. And you mentioned earlier, Josh, that you were you were in the church and you were seeing things, and that's kind of, it's literally, there's a scene in the film where the kid is in the church, talking to other entities and stuff. And so I kind of wanted to get your experience of that, or like, what do you remember, like a trigger coming, or like some kind of sensation that happened and then gave birth to those experiences, or witnessing entities from other planes? Do you remember like a switchover point?
There's a very real feeling that happens just before I would start noticing all that. And when I was a kid, it was just happening spontaneously because of environmental triggers. I was told that this was a spiritual place, and this is what we were doing was spiritual and sacred and holy. So, I had that view of it going into the service. And then when they would start singing hymns, and so there was music and everyone singing together, there would be kind of like when you hear a song come on that really makes you want to dance. You get this feeling in your bones, in your body that wants to move. It was kind of like that, but more like something that comes from at the right back here, right up to the back side of your head.
So you got those prickles on your neck.
Yeah, that same kind of excitation would occur. And like sometimes when you get scared and it seems like time slows down for a second, and then something like that, it's like that little bit of a electricity spark fires right here, and then there's that, and then I see a ball of light. I would see white sparkles a lot at first as a kid, and then more and more that I would pay attention to it. It was almost like at first just seeing everything as like white sparkles and glows, and then I got better and better at looking at it, and I would get different images where I would see people or angels or other things.
Let's see. So that's interesting. That's that crossover point, and I guess maybe you, Kev, have have you ever had an experience like that?
No, I have not. My father has. He's told me a couple of stories about some beings that he saw, one of which was his father after he had died. And I've channeled some people posthumously, but I haven't actually seen any entities. But the other thing though that was really interesting that you mentioned, like I call them just the chills in your back that you get. That I've been getting a lot recently, and it's very, very related to my spiritual practices. So I know when I'm going down the right path because I get those experiences, and I get different levels of them. So I don't just get maybe the same thing every time, but then when I come upon something really big and really amazing, then whoom, like my whole body just like lights up, and I feel like I've got 2-inch long hairs that are just sticking up everywhere. And then as it dissipates, I could feel them all laying back down. So like, I totally know what you're experiencing there. And I've really come to kind of like, appreciate that and use that as verification or validation, I would say, as to, am I going in the right way?
Yeah.
I love that I'm sorry, I love that you mentioned the channeling there. My first experience with channeling was when I was first beginning to get serious about studying to become a Wiccan priest. And I was at the Southern Delta Church of Wicca, ATC, in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Or it was just outside of Jonesboro. And the high priestess was doing a channeling session, and I got invited to sit in and listen and ask a question. And so it was interesting, because at first it just seemed almost like, because the high priest did this little guided meditation with her right at the beginning. And so at first it just seemed like hypnosis to me, which I was really familiar with already at that point. And then the candles in the room flickered, and the light around her face, everywhere else in the room, the light was the same, but the light right around her face like reduced to where it was like almost a shadow over her face. And then in the blink of an eye, that shadow disappeared, but her face had changed. And not only had her face changed, but her voice and her voice patterns changed. Mm-hmm. And that sent those chills all across my body. It really opened my mind up to possibility at that point.
Right. Yeah, these crazy. I guess that's kind of touching back on the topic of the spiritual awakening. These little moments, it could be such a brief moment, but has carries a big weight. Carries a massive realization within it, and they can just be so unexpected, and they can come at any time. You could not even realize, just be walking down the street one day, and then spontaneity, something happens. There's enormous potential in every passing moment. I guess, like, from reading the Law of One material, there's an analogy that channeled entity Ra makes, which is every day it's like you go to the store. You go to the store and imagine all the boxes, all the cans, all the the grocery section, all the frozen section, everything. It's all potential things that you're going to go into the store and get for your day, for your life. And depending on who you are and your experiences, there will be light in one of those packets, or could be half the store. In the darkest situation, there's always going to be one of those items which has the light for pure and complete transformation and ascension of your soul. It's always there. It's always present. You're probably not going to go find that one piece if you don't expect to find it at first. Of course, like, you have to believe it, you have to want it, you have to have experience in your life to validate it happening. And when all these things build up, then it doesn't just become one can that's got that light in it. It becomes half of the store. It becomes a whole aisle, or it becomes the whole floor of the store. And so you grow the potential for you to inadvertently select that experience for the day. So it's coming back to your story, Kev. Someone wants to go and just I want to go take some mushrooms and be enlightened. It's, you know, it's not going to happen like that. You know, it's probably going to give you something that's going to eventually help you realize some form of enlightenment. But you know, I ultimately think that you're not going to be able to force it. It's not something you can just demand to happen, you know, because the love and the light is free. So the only thing that's demanded and you know, desired to the point of force is what we know as the, you know, the dark, or the negative, the point. You know? We have the receptive and the point. So yeah, that just kind of reminded me of that story. Then you know, the potential and everything.
So, you know, you just brought up kind of something that we're, you know, our topic today, right, is enlightenment and the how we got there in the first place. And then I realized, oh, you know, what is enlightenment? Because the other thing I liked that you were just saying is, you know, they might not get enlightenment, but they would be enlightened in some way or in some form. So it's like, oh, well, what does enlightenment mean? And of course it said, you know, enlightenment, becoming the state of enlightened. Okay, now I got to look that up. Enlightened, having or showing a rational, modern, and well-informed outlook. All those are interesting. Rational, modern, that's weird, and well-informed. Okay, sure. So I just thought that was interesting, because that is not, you know, we use it but we drop the word spiritually in front of enlightened. But really, the root form of the word is just simply to be, you know, have more information. And you know, what do I think of when I think of it, even if it's not spiritual in its basis? Enlightenment is like, now I look at things very differently than I used to. This is a major development. Everything that I had thought before, I am now questioning, and now I have an all new perspective. That could be about the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be about spirituality, but what's interesting about it is, or for me, it is, I've always loved epiphanies. I love those moments when you've been going along thinking one thing, and then all of a sudden something happens, and you just go, "Holy crap!" You know, that I didn't even realize that. And I have a little tiny example that I love to tell, and hopefully I haven't already told you guys. So, you know, the word news, you see it all the time. We're going to watch the news. You know, you're totally used to it. You don't even think anything of it. But really, the word news, the root form is new, right? And then it's just a plural form of that. There's a whole bunch of news. There's a new over here, and there's a new over there, and there's a new over there, and we're gonna put it all together, and we got a whole bunch of news. I never thought of that before. Like, that's a huge epiphany for me.
And that would radicalize your way of thinking, right? And then, you know, something as small and as kind of clear as day, or like, you know, not clear as day, but like it's you see it all the time. Right. Suddenly triggers off that domino effect, and you start to question, is everything what I thought it was?
Right. Yeah. Those realms, news. Yeah. Oh, so that was just like, wow. Imagine what the news was like before. Like, how did that come to be? How did somebody said, "Hey, you got anything new?" "Oh, I got a bunch of things that are new." "Hell, I got news." You know, like, what was that moment, right? I really want to imagine that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Anyway, I'm gonna go back to I want to bring back to another interesting point that we had, which was, do we have to have something negative occur in order to have enlightenment? And so I thought about my first plant medicine, which kind of really wasn't a plant medicine. It was an all positive drug, and so similar to alcohol, MDMA. And I was thinking, oh, well, that's weird that's my first one, because I did not have a negative experience on that at all. It was a very, very positive experience, as a matter of fact. So then I had to go, well, so is that necessarily true? And the answer is yes, at least in this case, because I had been kind of miserable leading up to that moment. I had been engrossed in the way that this world works, and the real estate market was not in great shape. I was worried about my job. I was worried about, the real estate and all this silly stuff that I had and that I was trying to make happen in a certain very, very specific way. And I was weighted down with all of that stress and worry. And then I had the MDMA for the very first time. It was New Year's Eve, going into 2012. And I was kind of didn't really want to do it because I thought I was going to get a hole in my brain or something. But my friend convinced me that it would be fine. So I did it. And then I spent the whole evening just going, oh my gosh, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. Guys, everything's going to be okay. And they're just like, what the, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. No, really. Like, you don't understand. Everything's going to be okay. All this stuff that I'm worried about is going to be fine. Oh. Wow. So I needed that huge negative thing that was like rolling over me. And then I was able to like punch through it with the assistance. And then, that was the first moment that I went, okay, there's more to this. I don't have to be a victim of this world. I can do things my own way. I can be excited about things. I can shed some of that worry. And that really got me started to think about fear. And it really, I developed my premier like definition of fear, and which I use when I talk to people all the time. And I'll go ahead and do that real fast. Fear is a prediction of the future. Fear is not something that you are experiencing right now. I am not afraid I'm being stung by a bee. I'm afraid that I'm going to be stung by a bee. You cannot be afraid of something that you are currently experiencing. You can only be afraid of the future. Well, what's interesting about that to me is that, well, we humans are pretty freaking terrible at predicting the future. Like, we're the worst at it. And so if we spend all of our time having fear, having this really powerful emotion, this ridiculous thing, this survival emotion, thinking about the future, being worried that some very specific thing is going to happen to us, and we never get it right, we're only like 5% right in our ability to predict the future, then the chances are that the thing that we're so worried about either isn't going to occur, or it's just not going to be that bad. So yeah, that was the beginning of my, like, okay, there's a better way to think about everything. And so it wasn't a very spiritual first step, but it was a breaker of a wall that I needed to have broken, so that then I could have more of a spiritual awakening later.
I love that story, Kevin. It's right in line. I was gonna ask or go next. Of, is there something someone can do themselves to help their own spiritual awakening? And you're right. The plant medicines are one of the key tools that are available to us, because they work for everyone. And if they didn't work for you, you probably didn't do enough or change your setting and adjust your diet. Try again. But at the same time, I don't really want to recommend everybody go out and commit illegal acts and take risky substances because they don't know who made them and what's in them. So it's kind of it's your life, so you're going to have to take responsibility for it, kind of thing. But there are other things that people can do. Brainwave entrainment through binaural beats and isochronic tones is one such method, as well as practicing meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and every spiritual and religious tradition the world over has a host of different techniques that can be practiced and used to step into this as well. And I think that the very idea that, you know, there's positive versions and stimulus for spiritual awakening, I think it's like the whole yin and yang. It has to exist. If negative ones can do it, positive ones have to be able to as well. And that opens up so much possibility for us to take in every experience we have as another lesson and opportunity to grow and open up to greater and greater awakening. You know, that's why I don't define enlightenment as, you know, I liked that definition, the being well informed. I think that the best way to be well informed is to listen to the connection we have within and follow that, because it's the only thing we ever have to live with. That's why I define enlightenment as a state of mind that anyone can slip into. And the more time you do it, the easier it is to slip back into and to stay in it. Which is, yeah, go ahead.
Well, if I may, just a few things that you both sort of touched on there about, you know, fear and, you know, also, was it also you said, Kevin, about do we need pain to experience love, that sort of concept, and then you just said, Josh, about the yin yang principle. And you know, I think if we could look at like the archetype for spiritual awakening would be releasing yourself from stagnation, because we can have positive and negative experience, doesn't matter. They're all, we need to have change. We need to consistently find change, because at some point, if you want to consider life as positive and negative, at some point, if you keep changing and going upwards towards enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it, at one point, the stuff that you thought was good in your life will be the worst. If you know what I mean, if you imagine like rising on a wavelength like this, but you're kind of on an upwards trend, at some point, that top, that peak will be the dip. And so, you know, I think for a lot of people, the way we can translate that kind of idea into like a way of living, or just going about the day, is to imagine every little thought or action we take as you know, collected, and we store these things as our personality, and they kind of dictate how we're going to act or what we're going to say in a certain situation. So if we just change what we're doing, or we select the things that make us feel good and make us you know, choose things that makes us feel good and choose things that makes us feel bad, and we choose to gravitate towards one, and we start to put these together, then we can make that sink deeper. You can imagine, like, if these things are on like your you know, fleeting on your mind now and then, like you have something that's thought that you find that just sticks with you throughout the day or throughout the week, and then just grab that, find where that thought expands into, and then it starts to associate to other things, and eventually it all collapses down and starts to penetrate deeper into your core, and you start to get those aha moments, you know, the moments of awe, and like, you know, pricks in the back of your neck, and all these moments of inspiration come stronger and stronger, and eventually it serves its purpose. You know, you get waves of this stuff coming on, and we have to kind of collect and concentrate certain things until it becomes a package, and we can say, oh, that felt good to get out, or that felt like it was an epiphany, or like a new realization. You know, it was something expansive, something enlightening, something awakening. And like I said, awakening is breaking that stagnation. It can be good, it can be bad. If you hold on for too long, it becomes stagnant, and you can no longer squeeze the blood out of the stone. If it's something good you're holding on to, and that's something bad you're holding on to, has to be released, has to get out. So you can't keep either of them in boxes forever. So change has to be changed. I think that's a very important part of waking up. Just changing.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
I to follow right in line with what you were saying there of that change. You know, it's a thought that you think repeatedly becomes a habit, and a group of habits that are associated together become your behavior. Your behavior produces your life. And so it's whatever thoughts that you're thinking frequently that are ultimately going to lead to what your life produces for you, what your life experience is. And so if you, like you said, make it a daily practice of thinking of these things, then you're changing what your frequent thoughts are, which changes your habits, your behaviors, and ultimately your life.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit paradoxical in that sense, because you have to kind of stick with something at first to make it mean something. Otherwise, it's just a passing thought, or something you tried and then you gave up on it or something.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like a kind of sweet spot where it becomes, okay, this had its purpose and now it's ready to move on to somewhere else or someone else. And you collected that idea, you made it into something, and you passed on that knowledge in a sense. But then, like you said, if you hold it for too long, you say like, oh, I collected this knowledge, this is my like wisdom, I'm going to hold it now. And you're going to shelter it in. It's not doing anything for anyone, and it becomes a weight that you carry with you. It serves no one, doesn't serve yourself either. So everything has its time. Everything needs to be done to the right degree. So it has to constantly change, but has to sediment, has to kind of have time to brew before letting it go. Like baking a cake.
Indeed. Well, gentlemen, it's been an hour, a little over actually, and what about you? But I am ready to go get myself a late lunch and really sit and meditate on everything we've kind of talked about today. I hope you both know
just the experiences that we've had as well. We didn't get into those, did we?
What was that?
At the start, I think we were talking about kind of going into the experiences that we had, which we considered the pivotal moments, and we didn't get into those experiences throughout this course. So I was suggesting.
So how about the 60 seconds, and I will be right back, and we will continue this. Let's just stay live, and if you need to grab some water, that's what I'm actually going to go do. I'll be right back, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
We've had so much fun. We've gone so many directions. I didn't realize we forgot to circle back around. Thank you for the reminder. Give me 1 second.
All right, no worries. I'm going to get some water as well.
Yeah, me too.
We'll be back after these messages. The messages were your thoughts, by the way. Your own messages. So for anyone who does watch this, I think if you clicked on this video looking for kind of an answer for spiritual awakening, then it should be quite evident that you already hold the thoughts in your mind, or the keys that will bring you closer to an awakening. So you just need to sit and look. Scan your subconscious, find it, and it will reveal itself to you. That's why people are doing a lot more healthy eating these days, a lot more meditation, because we start to analyze ourselves a bit more, pay more attention to our own well-being, which then prompts greater chance of awakening. think about what you think is strange, or what's spiritual to you, and follow that.
And I'm back.
Hey,
Sorry about that.
that's
I am really
okay.
glad you caught me on that one. I have a bad habit of forgetting that I was going to circle back to something.
Well, I thought maybe we would just come back to it at a later date, but I mean, if everyone's happy.
My dog is kind of up and about, and she looks very confused. So I don't know if I'll be sticking around just because of that.
Well, why don't we go ahead and like Anthony suggested, why don't we come back to this subject and get a little more in depth about, you know, everybody's individual journey and story. I think we've done a really good job of covering kind of the archetypes today. So next time we can move into, you know, stories.
Storytelling.
Yes. All right.
Cool.
So with that, namaste, everyone. And thank you for being here.
All right.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
Bye, guys.
Take care, Kev. Bye-bye.
Love.